Well, I've lived in Beresfield all my life. I was born in my mother's house in Addison Road, and I lived there. I still live in Beresfield, but I moved up yonder to Women'sville now. Those days it was quite a different place to what it is now, of course. There was very few houses there. There's only probably about 20 houses in the whole place, you know.
And where did you go to school?
I went to school at the Beresfield Public School when I started, 5 years old. And then they started the convent school at Taro in next year, I think, and I went down there then. That was just, I remember being at the public school when the war ended in 1945, because they'd let everybody ring the bell. Well, I went to the Morris Brothers for high school, and I'd done 4 years there. So I would have been 15 years old, yeah. Turning 16 that year, I'd say, yeah. And I had to wait. I wanted to get an apprenticeship on the railway as a fitter and turner, and there wasn't any vacancies to start then, so I was a cleaner or something like that for a few months, and I started the next year as my apprenticeship. And that was in those days a 5-year apprenticeship, but with a 4-year technical college study. But I failed technical drawing the first year because I'd never did it at school, and so I had to repeat that year. And I stayed in the railway for a few years.
So what's your connection with the store?
When I was a fitter in the railway workshops at Cardiff. That's where I served my time, of course. And they asked if anybody in their 4th year would be interested in going to a country depot. They would pay them tradesmen's rates because they were that short of tradesmen, see. So I said, righto, well, I'll do that. So they sent me over to Port Waratah to the old roundhouse over in I don't know what area it'd be, the back of Tyres Hill. And I was there for a few months. I didn't like it much because there was a lot of split shifts there. They had me starting work at 10:30 in the morning, and they'd do short shifts on dog watch, and they would only pay you a single time, that sort of thing. So I never made any money out of it, It's only about £20 a fortnight, So anyway, I went frolicking around looking for another job, and a mate of mine told me that they were putting fitters on at Courtall's up at Tomigo. It was a new textile firm that government subsidised. They put about 7 million quid into it, and I went up there one day and applied for a job, and I got a job there, and I was there for 20 years, and I was just about to be made up to foreman, and they closed the place. So I looked in the paper and I saw a job advertised at the Co-op store as a transport manager. And I'd been doing a fair bit of work on motor vehicles on the side myself, just as a something to do, you know, being a young bloke when I got a motorbike and then I got a car and I stripped the engine down and souped it up as cheapest way I could and that type of thing. But anyway, I thought to myself, well, I might be able to handle it, but I could shoot the breeze a fair bit, you know, in those days, and sort of bumble my way through. So I went down. I got an interview, and I thought, well, if I get an interview, well, that's an achievement in itself, you know, because I told a mate of mine that I'd applied, and he said, he says, a job at the store's like a bloody, it's like hen's teeth, you know, to get a job there. They're winning the lottery, you know. Anyway, I get this interview and I go into Hunter Street and seen a bloke there named Bill McGrath. He was one of the top echelon people. And just had a yarn to him and told him what I'd been doing and that sort of thing. Anyhow, cut a long story short, I didn't get the job. And I forgot to tell you, when I went for this interview, they sent me out to Clyde Street, where the big workshop is out there, where they kept the horses and all of that sort of thing, and the trucks and the bakery vans, delivery vans and all that, you know. When I go in, there's half a dozen blokes sitting there in a stool, and one of them was the boss of the boiler house at Cuddles. He was an engineer, he had a degree, you know. And he says, what are you doing here? I said, oh, same as you, mate, I suppose, you know. Anyhow, I never got the job and neither did he. So I go home and I forgot about it, you know. Anyhow, a week later or a bit more, I get a phone call and to say, come in for another interview. So I go in there, same place I go, and tell them a bit more about what I'd been doing and that sort of thing, and I found out that the bloke that they gave the job to had been working on a prawn trawler in North Queensland somewhere. And he had an engineering degree, you know, whereas I never had a degree. I never went to university at all, you know. In fact, I didn't even finish high school. I didn't do the leaving certificate or that sort of thing, you know. And in fact, I was as dumb as they come, I thought, you know. Anyway, I found out this bloke hadn't been doing the right thing, and he had the spray painter painting his car for a weekend, and one of the big bosses come in and caught him, you know. So he got the bullet, you know. And anyway, cut a long story short, the bloke says, well, the job's yours if you want it. You know, as I was walking down the stairs, he come out and he said, when can you start? Well, I said, well, in a fortnight. Oh, he said, we've had nobody here doing this job before this bloke, before you came, he said, because the previous bloke had died, you know, and some weeks or more, I don't know just how long, but a fair while. Anyway, I said, well, I want to have a spell before I start. I said, to tell you the truth, I said, I haven't had a holiday for 12 months. Anyway, I said, well, if I start now, I'll have to go another 12 months before I get a break, you know. And so we used to take a caravan up to Foster. That was our holiday spot, you know. I thought I'd like another week, have a week up there. Kylie was only little, you know, and I think she's only a baby at that time.
Did you say it was 1976 that you started there?
Yeah. he said, all right, okay, he said. And he says, how much money you been earning? And I said, well, I was earning actually at the time about 120, I don't know, was it pounds in that? Yeah, dollars would have been in by then. And I added a bit onto it, see. So, and he put another $30 on it, so I would have been the highest paid fitter in Newcastle at the time, because that's all I actually was, you know.
That's pretty
And anyway, I had been working of a night on the side catching chooks at Staggles, you know, because we only lived around the corner from the main gate, you know. And I'd go out, and I was working at my day job at the textile mill at Cordall's through the day, and working of a night catching chooks, you know. Sometimes I'd just get home after doing 5 or 6 hours up at Bulladeel or somewhere, anywhere around the valley, and I'd go straight to work. I'd have a shower, Mum would have breakfast ready for me, and I'd off one job straight onto another one, you know. And something was like, if I went to the toilet to watch out I didn't start snoring because I'd go to sleep. You know?
What sort of work were you doing?
Well, I didn't actually do any manual work because I was the manager. And I had a bag of fruit on. And I had a foreman under me to look after all the mechanics. I had about 3 or 4 mechanics there to do that sort of work. They had a spray painter for doing that, and a couple of grease monkeys for doing the oil changes and all of that sort of thing, you know. And
So would you say you would delegate to those people what their job was?
well, I left it all to the foreman, a bloke named Brian Nolan, who on the side was teaching people to drive trucks. And only the week before I'd had a few truck lessons off of him because I wanted to get a job to earn more money on the chook run by driving the truck, because you got a higher rate of pay instead of just being off-side, eh? Anyway, I didn't tell him that I'd got this job. I didn't know that he worked there, see? And now when I goes to him, he says, what are you doing? I cracked the job here, you know.
That's incredible.
And what would a fitter be doing at the store? What sort of work?
Well, my role there was to look after the maintenance on anything that moved. Any of those trucks was my responsibility, even though I had fellas doing the job. The responsibility was mine. All the refrigeration in all their shops, I think they had 19 branches over the... I'll sit down and just count them all up, you know. That they had one up at Corindi. It was the furthest one away. There was one at West End, Toronto, God, all over the place. Stockton, New Lambton, Cardiff, Swansea, Belmont. And if a fridge went bung or something like that, they'd ring the transport office where I would spend my day. And if I wasn't actually working on a broken down fridge or fixing some roof on a leaky roof, I had to do virtually anything, you know. I remember being out at West End. The roof was rusted out. It should have been condemned, really. It was leaking, and I seen where the leak was come from, and I didn't have any iron or anything to do, and I looked in the paddock next door. There's a bit of old iron was laying on the ground in there. So I unscrewed the sheet, and I lifted it up and slid the old sheet next door out the paddock underneath just to stop it leaking, you know. It got me out of trouble, so, you know, that can go for another day or so till the rain stops. But anyway, I had to do anything like that to make a running repair or just to keep the show on the road type of thing, you know what I mean? So that's what my main thing was, but I had to do a lot of paperwork in it too, you know. Had to do all the assessments on vehicles for inspection. I had to get that licence. Had to study this book that thick, you know, at the RTA to learn how to check the braking system on the semi-trailers, you know, how many seconds it took for it to build up after it being exhausted through pushing the pedal, all that type of thing, you know. And I had a motor vehicle that they supplied, which I used to go and travel to and from work, and they paid my phone bill, and I'd get called out at any time something went bung, you know, and I had to go to work, you know. At some particular place it might get broken into and I'd smash a window and you'd have to go and improvise, put some boards across the break and so the shop could trade the next day, you know. And one day some vandals lit a fire in the garbage outside the Edgeworth branch, and it was right next to the fuse box. Burnt all the fuse box and it cut the power and a lot of stuff in one of the fridges, all defrosted. It never went bad. It wasn't there long enough to go bad, you know. The boss said, this will all have to go to the dump now. We won't be able to sell it because we can't refreeze it again, you know. There's bags of bloody frozen peas and beans, carrots, anything like that, you know. So I got the garbage truck and I'll go out and I get on the phone to the missus. I said, I ain't got any room in the fridge. So I went round via my place and all the neighbours, I chucked them a heap of bloody stuff, except for the ice cream. That all leaked out through the floorboards. Oh, well, the bakery vans, there would have been about, say, 15 or 20 of them. There was 4 flat top trucks and a semi-trailer, which they used for carting a lot of stuff, you know. Yeah. And at the time they were changing over from the horse-drawn delivery vans for doing the bread deliveries to fully motorised. They had either old Bedford 8 horsepower, just like a little, what would you say, you would remember Austin A40s or that, but they were only about 1.5 litre engines in them, you know. Yeah. Like the engine would only be that long, sort of thing. And they were changing over to these Chev, bit bigger vans they were, and doing away with the horse-drawn vehicles. So the store's vehicles in those days were renowned for their paint jobs and that on them. They were a showpiece, you know. In fact, I think after they've had a big, like probably what you'd say the semi-trailer of horse-drawn vehicles in the Newcastle show in the big parade, you know, because it was a beautiful bit of work, you know. They had the tradespeople there that were bodybuilders, you know, and there was a real achievement to have something, you know, that looked so good, you know.
What year did they phase out the horses?
Well, that year that I went there, that'd be 1976, yeah. I got friendly with the ostler there, a bloke named Wilf Princehorn. His family had a place in Broadmeadow where they had wedding receptions and that. I can't remember it, but he was a good bloke, you know. Anyway, he looked after the horses, and they'd go miles. They'd go out to Redhead, Swansea, you know, to live and bread. And then in the city, Newcastle, you know, the horse would walk along the street, and the bloke with the bread, he'd just take enough bread to do about 3 or 4 hours, and the horse would go along to the next house. He got that used to going where the bloke went, you know. And I remember that one day Wilf told me that a horse got a fright out at Redhead and took off and run right back from Redhead back to Clyde Street in Newcastle, and he's trying to get in the stable because they got a feed as soon as they got back, you know. But he still had the cart on the back. He wrecked the bloody door, wrecked the cart, tried to get in there, and he got in there. Anyway, everything got busted. So anyway, they phased those out in that year, you know, and so they had to put a new, an extra mechanic on to handle the extra work, because they had a bigger van that they used in at Hunter Street branch, because they, I don't know the reason they bought it, but it was more like a, you know, those ones that cigarette trucks that, what would a truck be like? It was all enclosed, you know, and with big double doors on the back, you know, you could walk around inside of it, you know. They used to take that somewhere if they wanted to do a lot of big crates of stuff, you know. If they'd use it for furniture for the store in Newcastle, because it was a different concept of shopping in those times, you know. You didn't go in and sort of have a look in the one place, you know. You could wander around through the place and look at every different thing in there and not buy anything, you know. But then if you went on some particular thing, you'd ask one of the shop assistants, of whom there were many, and they'd find what you want. If they didn't have it, they'd get it for you. And it was an experience that people took just to go shopping, you know. Even window shopping, they'd just walk along the street and have a look in the window, you know. Yeah. Nobody had a hell of a lot of money in those days, you know, but...
Did many people get their groceries delivered to home?
Oh, they did, yeah. None up my way, because we didn't have a branch up in Beresford. But once I joined the store, well, we drove into town. I thought it was a decent thing to do was go and buy your groceries there. So I took Annie with me, and he goes into the branch and run into the general manager. He was doing his shopping there too, you know.
But about how many people do you think would have worked in the bakery?
Oh, okay, right.
Approximately.
Oh, I'd say about 15 or 20. Yeah, and I can tell you a story about that. I got called out one morning early, like 3 o'clock. And the bakery manager says one of the ovens was blown up. Blown up? I said, what's happened? He said, it was on Sunday night. And he said the apprentice comes in early, and the dough man goes upstairs, starts making up the doughs ready to be baked. There's a process they go through to do it, which is irrelevant. Anyhow, this big oven, there was a big long thing, and it was as wide as this room, and it stood about that high, and then it went straight through like that, about half a k or more. And every so far along was a burner, which went across like that, you know, all the way down it. And there was a hole next to it that round where you poked a wand through there which had gas to it, which you lit with a match, and then you put it in there and that lit that burner, you know. You'd go along and do that. That was the apprentice's job. Come in early on Sunday, light the oven up, let it warm through, you know, so it was hot when they started baking. Anyhow, he comes in there and he turns the gas on. The gas line come from the gasworks next, just around the corner, you know, big pipe that round. And the one of this oven was that round, like 2.5 inch or 2 inch anyway. And there's a big valve out there where you could isolate the whole thing from the gasworks, you know. Anyway, he turns the gas on and he didn't have any matches. So he had to go up, climb up 5 flights of stairs to where the dome had worked to get a match off him, a box of matches. So in the meantime, the oven's filling up with bloody gas, see? So he comes down, lights the wand, pokes it up, boom, boom, up goes the bloody oven. Blew the whole ceiling out of the bloody building. Blew the windows out of the bloody toilet. I drove in the front gate. The windows was out on the street. Oh, Jesus, I said, what's going on here, see? Anyway, what happened, the ceiling, it must have been full of 100 years of bloody dust and cockroach droppings and stuff, you know. And the whole lot blew up. It's come down, filtering down through the air. All the other ovens was going. They were all the doughs and the tins full of dough, all going in the oven. All this black stuff coming down on top of it. There must have been a real crunchy crust on the bread that next morning. So they had to keep it going because otherwise half Newcastle wouldn't have had any bread, you know. So anyway, when he explained to me what had happened, I said, go around to the front of the building, you'll see a big valve there with a pipe coming from the gasworks, turn that off. That's the first thing to do. Because that was live gas going into the building, you know. It could have been a bloody disaster. This young fella, he never got hurt. Just a blast come out through this hole, you know, went past him and he ran, you know. So anyway, I went down there. I done as best I could to keep the place going, and I went home to have a shower and have some breakfast, you know, and they had everything organised then to keep the place mobile, you know. Mm-hmm. So that was an experience that I'd never had before, you know.
So we were just curious about getting back to the baker's oven. How did the oven work? What was the mechanics of the? Because it
had a type of a chain. It was. Have you ever seen a trackscavator? It's like a series of links about that long in a big bank, you know, that went across like that, and there was that would run however long you wanted and just go around a sprocket and come back like that. And when it went past the burner, the whole oven was made of cast iron, you know. Once it got hot, you could turn the gas down because the heat of the oven would do the baking as it went along, you know. So it just, you put the dough in one end and took the bread out the other. Yeah. That's how it worked, you know. And the other ovens were, this one only stood this high, you see. But the other ovens, they were up probably about 6 foot high or more, and there was a series of trays with a lid on them, which lifted up, you know, and that stopped the bread from rising up where you get the loaf with the brown side, what they call high top loaves now. Whereas this one with a lid on, they just come out a square loaf, you know, and it would lift up, the lid would lift, and it'd come to the end of its travel, and the tray would tip over, the bread would drop straight down onto this endless chain with and it would just move to the side, see, and by the time it got past, then the next tray would be there, and the bloke would be once they loaded the whole lot, that'd go around so many turns to cook the bread, you see. And I remember that one of the ovens they wanted to speed the process up and put more fuel into it so it'd cook quicker. So I had to work out the gear chain required to speed that chain up for so many feet per second to move it over, just so it would be clear before the next tray come down, you know, which took a bit of doing, you know, but I finished up getting it right. But the bread out of the big oven, the oldest one, the one that blew up, they used to have this wooden conveyor belt. It had a wooden spokes in it that what'd you call it? Slats, like so long, about that wide, and only about that thick. And on the end, the chain would hold them about that far apart, and the loaves of bread would just drop on that, and it'd run down. And they'd have the bread carters used to pick it up themselves and load their truck or whatever conveyance they had. That was their job to do that. But when I got there, that had all been done away with. So, yeah. They used to put their own radios in the van so that they could listen to the radio while they were on their daily routine, you know. Yeah. They never ever replaced that big long oven that they had there. It'd been there since before the war, but I had to go and find another oven to replace it, and there was one for sale down at Wangaratta. Me and the bakery manager went down there. We flew down there somewhere close, had to drive for about 3 hours to get there, and had a look at this oven that was out in the paddock, rusted out, not worth 2 bob, you know. So we finished up buying one off the Belmont bakery, which had closed 6 months before, and got it carted up by truck and knocked the side out the building down at Clyde Street and put it in there, you know, and that was still going when I left, you know. Yeah, they had all the, a lot of girls in the Hunter Street branch that did all the accounting and that, writing out all the invoices and everything for the members, and everybody was going digitised then, you know, and like they had computers coming in and they were overtaking people's jobs, you know, and all those women and that was doing that, they got replaced by a bloody computer disc. Yeah. And so, you know, it saved them a lot of money, but they'd left it too late to do that, and they should have done that years before. they had people walking around and coming to serve people in their branches, you know, which was a convenience for the customer, but cost money, and it was too much money in those days. Like Woolworths was killing them, you know, and
Bernie, can you tell me about the divvy? The
oh,
divvy.
right, yeah.
What was the divvy?
Well, like I can't remember what the percentage was of the discount that you got, but I think twice a year, depending on how much you bought, there would be that discount would be added up and built up, and you could spend it or leave it there. You could have share capital in the store itself, you know, which I started banking a bit of money there. In fact, I lost a bit of money when it closed, a couple of $1,000, but people that done their shopping there, you had the convenience of having your groceries delivered to your door. And a lot of elderly people done their shopping there and bought their bread, in fact everything, they bought everything there, you know. But there again, labour costs, it didn't pay to have a man come and deliver half a loaf of bread, you know, because there wasn't that much profit in that to pay his wages, you know. And how will I put it, the dividend that people got, well, it wasn't much because they didn't spend a hell of a lot of money there after a while, because the other shops were discounting their sales to such an extent that they couldn't compete, you see, and pay like shop assistants and that type of thing there, you know. But Divvy Day was a big day, you know, in the year. And when you go into Hunter Street where you never knew, it was all the excitement, you know. You'd wonder how much money am I going to get this year, you know. Have I got enough to buy a bike for Christmas for the young bloke or anything like that, you know. And I remember Annie and I going in there to Hunter Street, and the place was full of people, you know, walking around. Yeah, it was a big day.
Do you mind just clarifying about the dividend, the divvy? Was that something that accumulated as the more you spent, you would get a percentage that would accumulate?
Yeah, they paid the interest on that just like the bank, you know.
I see.
Yeah.
On what you purchased.
So you could get all, as I said, anything you wanted for your house, hardware, or get roof and iron, or new carpet, or a fridge, or a clothesline, or anything like that. I got George Tweedy, who lived next door, a new rotary clothesline. Got a discount on it because I was on the staff, you know. Yeah, poor old George. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
at Christmas time, they were renowned for the display in the window of the store. People would come from miles away just to have a look and see what their format was that year. They'd have different themes of whatever that was meant to be, you know. And people come from miles away just to have a look, you know. And people just walk down the street. People would go window shopping. They never had enough money to buy anything, but they'd just like to have a look and see if, you know, if they won the lottery, they might buy something, you know. They got a new general manager. There was two there when I went there. A bloke named Cole Williamson, he was the manager. And he retired, and Bill McGrath, he took over his job. And then next thing I hear a rumour flying around, the store can't pay its bills, its checks are bouncing. If you do any work for the store, get cash. and my own paycheck bounced at the club. I used to cash mine at the bowling club on the way home from work, you know. And I said to I was embarrassed. I said to the club manager, I said, I'll go and get you the money now if you want it. He said, no, that's all right. He said, I've seen him about it. It's going to be fixed up on Monday. And from then on, things started going backwards, you know. But I knew Norm Mottram, he was the maintenance man in there. And he told me when he climbed up on top of the building and looked down after the earthquake, he said that whole wall on that end of the building, that was the northern end, it had bowed out and was resting on the building next door. It was only that far apart. He said that was what was holding that whole building up. Yeah. So if that let go, the whole building would have went like that, fell down.
Or what do you think the legacy of the whole model of the store would be?
Oh, well, I suppose it'd be the difference in lifestyle in those days compared with now. It's all hurry, and in those days you got to remember that we lived a different lifestyle in those days, you know. And you could walk down the road. I mean, when I was a kid, this will explain it to you. My grandma used to drive up to the auction sales in Maitland at the sale yards down near Newcastle, Maitland Station. She used to sell chooks and stuff there herself. But anyway, she'd drive her car up over the bridge, come down on High Street in Maitland. She'd pull up at Tyler's garage on the way and she'd get a gallon of petrol for $2 bob, you know. And along come Mrs. Pomfret in the sulky. She'd pull up right on the bloody road and they'd have a yarn for half an hour. Any cars, wouldn't be too many cars come along, but they'd just go around it. No worries. Everything moved that slow, you know. Somebody come the other way, he'd stop. More like they'd know him anyway, you know. So that was how life was, you know. That was a lot, because nobody had that much money, you know, but...
You were talking about the level of service on the way down here. Do you think that was a significant aspect?
Well, the service was always very, very good, you know. The people realised that the customer was their livelihood, and that's what they were there for. If you went to for some particular item and they didn't have the colour, or they'd try their very best to get you something that was close to it, or get an article that wasn't there, they'd try and get that sent there by a day or two, you know, that sort of thing. Because they had every different department that you like to mention. You could get your ironmongery there, or your greengroceries, or, you know, if you wanted this or that, you'd find it there, you know. I have got a few odds and ends that I picked up down there, you know, when I worked there.
What sort of things, Dad?
Oh, I got a couple of floor cramps for cramping floorboards together. I got an edger that I made out of a bacon slicer blade, a round disc that was using for cutting bacon, you know. They used to wind the handle and push the wheel through. It wasn't motorised in electricity those days, but I've still got that at home. But I don't use it now because I don't do any mowing at all. But
so Bernie, do you keep in contact with many people that you worked with or knew through the store?
Well, from time to time I run into people that I worked with there, you know, the other day I was up the club having a beer on Saturday afternoon, or generally, about Saturday evening. I went up there and they were just finishing bowls, because I used to play a lot of bowls myself years ago, until I hurt me back, and I haven't been able to play. But one of the bread carters, a member of another club, I thought, was there playing bowls, and he was going home. He's coming out, and he looked at me, and I looked at him. I said, "There you go, mate." I'd forgotten his name, you know. And he said, "I'm going all right." And I said, "Where did you go after you worked at the store?" He said, "I retired. I was just on retirement age when it closed." And I says to him, "Where do you live now?" He said, "I live here in Beresfeld." So I've never seen him before.
What sort of impression does the store have on you as being a place to work compared to, say, the mines or when you did your apprenticeship?
Right.
Like what?
Well, it was a big move for me to go into had a lot more responsibility, you know, because as being a fitter, I only was responsible for the job that I had been given to fix this or, you know, whatever. But when I had a secretary that did all the paperwork. She's a married woman, beautiful girl too she was, and she was of great help to me, you know, and I really appreciated her help. At being a pommy, we didn't get on very good, you know, but she done her best to help me, and I gave her a very good reference when I left. I left there a couple of weeks before the store closed, you know, and but to have these people under your control, you couldn't afford to like oversee every little thing, because you just couldn't handle it. You know, there wasn't enough hours in the day to do it, you know. And the walking you had to do, you know, I'd come home and I'd feel like I'd been on a bloody pick and shovel all day, because I was all wound up tight, and I'd go and have half a dozen schooners just to try and wind down, you know.
Were you proud? Like, did you feel like a sense of pride working at the store, and it was something that did you feel like you were a part of something?
Well, I was proud of what I had achieved, you know, and just in getting the job, even though it was a big move for me, you know. But there was a certain amount of deference paid to you, you know, if you had that job, you know, and so you had to think carefully before you made a decision, and what'll I say, I'll put it this way, I had a blue with my secretary, and she had this receipt book, and she threw the book on the table in front of me like that. One of the blokes was standing at the counter. He says, "Throw it back at her," and he says. There's Dale, I says, before you control men, you've first got to be able to control yourself. So my first reaction was to do that, you know, and that wasn't the thing to do. And so the next morning I apologised to her for whatever the thing was that upset her, you know. And we got on very well, you know. Right. Well, they used to have a Christmas party at the main branch of the store in Newcastle for all the managers, you know. And they had any amount of tucker that some of the stuff there I'd never eaten before, you know. I didn't even know what it was, you know. I was only meat and 3 veg man myself. And the first one that I went to, my immediate superior was one of the nicest people you'd ever meet. His name was Ernie Thompson. And he got up and called everyone to attention and says, well, there's a new transport manager who is also the maintenance manager. This is the bloke you come to if something goes wrong. So stand up, Ernie, let them all look at you. Well, I soon got to know all them managers, I'll tell you. Because sometimes they'd blow a fuse out the front on the pole or on a particular fridge or something like that. Well, you know, you'd have to go and try and find one to set the thing and, you know, because you couldn't afford to go and call somebody out, electrician, at 3 o'clock in the afternoon to put a fuse in, you know, because you could get the fuse yourself, read on it what size it was, turn the main off, put the fuse in, turn it back on. If there wasn't a major fault there, it wouldn't blow, you know. Sometimes they'd blow just for the sake of doing so, you know, but so these blokes, electricians, they think they're God Almighty, you know, because they got a bit of expertise about electricity, you know, but they don't have to be Einstein to work out the rudiments of it, you know.
So you could just fix anything and anything that was needed.
Well, you can go so far, you know, but once it gets out of that, well, we used to deal with a firm named Urigan Allen, a bloke named Jack Buckley. He was one of the trumps there, and they'd send a bloke there and soon trace the trouble and fix it, you know, if they could. But sometimes you couldn't fix something, you might have to have a fridge taken out completely and sent down to Coles Refrigeration out in Lambton, and they'd have to put a new motor in or something like that. But I've taken motors off myself and changed them, or got one rewound, you know, up at Cessnock. You go up there.
Bernie, when you left in 1980, what were your memories about leaving?
Well, I was very, very lucky to get another job. I was glad that I got a job, because I was over 40-year-old then, and I was,
44.
1935 I was born, so that I would have been
46?
Yeah. And only that I run into Buck Jones, who was a mate of mine. He was the engineer at that colliery. I didn't know it. And I went up the valley. I used to take a day off a month and drive up the valley. Everywhere I seen a coal truck come out, I'd go in, you know, put in the application there and say, you know, you're putting any fitters on here, even though I'd never worked in the coal industry in my life, you know. But I knew a little bit about hydraulics, not much, because most of the gear in the mining industry now is hydraulic, you know.
And did you finish up at the store because it was winding down?
Yeah. It was just about done, you know.
Yeah.
I had to get rid of, that's what I was going to tell you, I've thought of it. When I went there, they were changing over from the horse-drawn gear, and when you went to Newcastle in the train, when you got just before Wickham Station, you looked out the window, the back of the store, there was the horse paddock was there, you know, with all their big, beautiful draft horses in there, you know. You know, they were massive horses, and their feet was that wide, you know. And we had our own blacksmith, bloke named Wal Wright. He was a good bloke too. Most of the blokes I met there were really good blokes, you know. But anyway, he used to make all the horseshoes for the big draft horse. They were different size shoes by number 8 or number 10 size. I don't know how they measured them, but they had heaps of them already made, and they were stacked in Hessian bags in the blacksmith shop, you know. And my boss in Hunter Street, bloke named Jack Gunn, he was head Sharang, and he said, we'll have to start selling them horseshoes, see what you can, because we're not going to be wanting them anymore. You know, I'll leave it to you, he said. So I thought to myself, well, how will I advertise them? I said, well, I thought to myself, I'll get a copy of the Land newspaper, you know, which goes countrywide to all the farming community, you know. And I put an ad in the paper, said horseshoes, draft horseshoes for sale, you know, so and so much. I didn't say how much I wanted for them, but I just left the phone number. And I get a call from this shearer in Victoria. And she said she was interested in buying some draft horseshoes. And I said, well, we've got sets of them here. I want so much per set, you know. And she says, how many in the set? Well, I thought that was a strange question to ask. So I said, well, I says, there's 4 unless you got any 5-legged horses down there. And she says, well, I got one down here that's that well hung, you'd think it had another leg. She wasn't going to let me bloody win, so I said I didn't have an answer for that, you know.
Wait until I tell Marie.
Anyway, she finished up buying about 10 bags. Apparently she was the secretary of some draft horse show organisation in Victoria. And they had so many different horses in their club that they had to go and they found it hard to find a farrier in those days that could do the draft horse. You know, they have ones for race horses, but you know they only led little feet like that. You know.
Did the store have its own farrier for, I guess?
Yes, they did. Yeah.
And
yeah.
was this
They had
selling of these
They had,
horseshoes?
when I got there, the blacksmith was doing the shoeing because they only had probably 3 or 4 horses left by then.
And did you have to sell all these horseshoes when the transition was happening over?
Yeah, they wanted to make the money out of them.
Yeah.
They got all the old fixtures and things like that, where a store had closed down and all the glass was there. They would smash the glass up and sell it to be recycled, you know, which was a shame really because, you know, it was quite expensive to buy.
You know, were you quite sad, I guess, when the store closed down and you had to go up to the...
Well, I thought I had a job then for the rest of my life, you know. But when I started there, I was 42. Yeah, well, to get a job at that age, anybody over 40 had a buckley's chance of getting a job, you know. And then it was a big difference for me. I'd been off the tools for 4 years. I'll get up down the pit underground. I'm laying under a bloody big 40-ton machine with a set of bloody spanners, and
terrible.
you just use your light on your head. I couldn't even put a bloody socket on the end of the breaker bar. God. I took up bowls once I got a bit older, you know, just so I could fulfil the commitment to be a member of the club. And you know, it wasn't actually a requirement, but they said they would like you to play bowl, so I thought, oh, I'll have a game now and again just so I could have a beer on a Sunday, you know. But I found I liked it and I wasn't too bad at it, and I thought to myself, this is pretty easy, you know, which happens to everybody once they start. They find it easy at first, then the wheel falls off, Then they start learning how to do it over again, you know. Anyway, have a beer after the game. One day I was sitting there talking to a mate of mine. There was a stranger at the table. And who it was Bill McGrath, who was the general manager when I went to the store. One of them, you know. And I said, I remember you, Bill. I said, you remember me? And I finished up out at Clyde Street. Oh, he said, I thought I'd seen your face before somewhere. He said. Anyhow, it was him who told me that there was going to be a reunion at the rugby club in Waratah. And I said, well, right, mate. He lived in Christie Road in Taro, which is right on the border between there and Beresford. And he built a granny flat thing on the back of his daughter and husband's house, and he lived there, and they done his cooking and whatever for him, you know. And we used to get up and he'd come and have a chat with us on a Friday night, you know. So I said, well, I'll pick you up and we'll go down to rugby club, you know. So down we go. And he brought a little notebook with him, and his writing in that book was, what do they call that?
Shorthand?
No, like exceptionally good writing.
Okay.
Copper plate or something like that.
Calligraphy?
Yeah, like that, yeah.
Wow.
Awfully neat.
And that was just like freehand writing, and it was really a pleasure to read it, you know.
And what was
And
written?
he started in the store on the milk cart years and years before, and he worked his way up to general manager. Yeah. But I know that it was a disappointment to me to have to make the decision to find another job at that age, you know. But nowadays people have got to be doing that all the time. There's a lot of jobs are not permanent jobs, even so. I mean, the government's bragging about all these jobs, but I don't believe that they're not permanent jobs at all, you know. And I listened to the radio early this morning about 4 o'clock, and it was a bloke from the Smith family, the state manager from Victoria that's up here promoting the Smith family. About 1 child in 6 is living in poverty in Australia, you know, that their family haven't got enough money to buy shoes and school uniforms, and they can't go on excursions. Half of them don't even go to high school, you know. And there's such a waste of resources that you never know what they could be, and if they got the chance to get a decent education and that sort of thing, you know. I can tell you this, that the store, if you'd have been with the store a long time and were a good customer, and say the breadwinner got sick and run out of sick pay or didn't get any sick pay, the store would hold them for a couple of months for their grocery bill, you know, to keep them from bloody starving, or else going to charity or something like that, you know. In those days, that would happen.
Yeah. They had a sickness benefit. Didn't they have a health insurance scheme?
They did, yes. Yeah, they did, yeah. Yeah, I joined that when I started, yeah. Yeah, they had something, the share capital, they put so much aside for the medical side of things, you know. But they had, first time in my life that I paid in any superannuation was then, because I worked at Caudles for 20 years, and that wasn't in a part of the deal for an ordinary, like a ordinary worker. Only the staff, they had the weekly staff and the monthly staff, you know. like foremen, that sort of thing, superintendents, or that was on the monthly staff, you know. They were the top echelon, you know. So when I left, I just got me holiday pay and me long service leave, and that was it, gone. You paid so much towards it yourself, you know. As far as I know, anyway. I know I was only there. I had $700 accumulated in the 4 years that I was there, you know. So it was just one of the benefits of the store. Going to be here for posterity.
Yes. I thought you might like